नमस्कार सभी लर्नर्स जो इनरोल्ड हैं हमारे सर्टिफिकेट इन अर्ली चाइल्डहुड स्पेशल एजुकेशन इनेबलिंग इंक्लूजन विजुअल इम्पेयरमेंट हियरिंग इम्पेयरमेंट और इंटेलेक्चुअल डिसेबिलिटीज़, आप सभी लर्नर्स का स्वागत है। आई ऑल्सो वेलकम अदर व्यूअर्स हु आर एसोसिएटेड विद अस राइट नाउ। जो अन्य दर्शक हमारे साथ आज इस सत्र में जुड़े हैं उनका भी ज्ञान दर्शन चैनल पर स्वागत है। डियर लर्नर्स, till now you have had a good orientation about the program of your study, the CESEIHI, CESEIVI and CESEIID. These C programs in which you have enrolled, you know about the different courses which are part of this program, and you have received an orientation about the scope of the program of the study. You have also known by now what are the components of these programs. And in earlier teleconferencing sessions, you have learnt about disability, you have learnt about what is disability, what do we mean by it, who is a child, what does it mean to be a child with disability, the historical contexts and perspectives in disability, emergence of different models of disability, be it charity model, welfare model, social model, medical model. You have also learnt about different types of disability, the causes and the prevention which are essential to cater to these specific disabilities. In continuation with that, in today's session, आज के इस सत्र में हम बात करेंगे एक स्पेसिफिक डिसेबिलिटी के बारे में। अभी तक आप डिसेबिलिटीज़ के बारे में जानते रहे, अलग अलग तरह की कौन कौन सी डिसेबिलिटीज़ हैं, उनके क्या कारण हैं, वो क्यों होते हैं, उनको कैसे प्रिवेंट किया जा सकता है, इसके बारे में आपने जाना। पर आज इस सत्र में हम एक स्पेसिफिक डिसेबिलिटी के बारे में जानेंगे और हमारा जो चर्चा का आज का विषय रहेगा वो रहेगा स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज़, जिसे हम SLDs भी बोलते हैं। ये आपका जो प्रोग्राम है उसका एक कोर्स है, इंट्रोडक्शन टू डिसेबिलिटीज़ BCD 101, उसके अंतर्गत आता हुआ एक टॉपिक है। तो अब आज हम बात कर रहे हैं स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज़ के बारे में। बिफोर वी बिगिन एंड वी कंटिन्यू विद द सेशन, आई वांट टू टेल यू दैट आफ्टर दिस सेशन, एक तो यू विल बी एबल टू डिफाइन स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज़। द ऑब्जेक्टिव्स फॉर टुडेज सेशन विल रिमेन so that you will be able to define specific learning disabilities. You will also be identify the core areas which are typically affected by specific learning disabilities. You will learn about the causes and other underlying factors which contribute to occurrence of specific learning disabilities, and you will also learn about identification and assessment of specific learning disabilities. Now let us try to understand what are specific learning disabilities. In a common way, when we try to understand specific learning disabilities, we say that a group of neurodevelopmental disorders that can impact a person's ability to learn effectively is something that we refer to as specific learning disabilities. यानी कि एक न्यूरोडेवलपमेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स के कुछ ग्रुप ऑफ न्यूरोडेवलपमेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स होते हैं, जब वो हमें इम्पैक्ट करते हैं किसी भी पर्सन को, किसी चाइल्ड को, वी से दैट इट लीड्स टू inability to learn efficiently in that individual, and that is what we refer to as specific learning disability. But it does not stop just there. When we talk about neurodevelopmental disorders, we are basically talking about a group of conditions that affect the development of the nervous system. Now when we say nervous system, we're talking about the nervous system which also includes the brain and the spinal cord. तो ये न्यूरो डेवलपमेंटल डिसऑर्डर्स या न्यूरो डेवलपमेंटल कंडीशंस जिनकी हम बात कर रहे हैं, ये बहुत वेरिंग होते हैं, और स्पेसिफिक लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज़ इज़ जस्ट वन ऑफ इट्स काइंड्स. सो व्हेन डज इट हैपन और व्हेन कैन वी सी देम? सो दीज डिसऑर्डर्स टिपिकली अपीयर ड्यूरिंग चाइल्डहुड ईयर्स. मतलब बच्चा अगर स्कूल जाता है, स्कूल जाने से पहले ही हमें देखने में मिल जाता है कि ऐसे कुछ डिसऑर्डर्स जो हैं वो ऑब्जर्वेशन में आ जाते हैं, बट दे कैन एक्चुअली परसिस्ट थ्रू आउट अ पर्सन's लाइफ, especially if they are not managed through the life. Now, what are the characteristics or what are the difficulties that we say that a child who has a specific learning disability, what are the persistent difficulties that the child has? So the first thing that we see is that there is a difficulty in acquisition and use of specific academic skills. By academic skills, I'm referring to reading, writing, simple maths, and not just simple but complicated also after a level, and spoken language. So these are the basic skills that we are talking about which are affected academically, academic skills which are affected when we talk about specific learning disability. Now let us try to understand it with the help of an example. हम जाने कि एक 8 साल की बच्ची है, there is an 8-year-old girl child and she is very enthusiastic, she is very bright. She engages in sports activities, specifically horse riding and swimming. She also attends after-school classes wherein she engages in classical music and dance. She engages in art activities and she really performs very well in all these activities. She has a special inclination towards gadgets also. Now, these are the activities that she is enjoying and she is really good at. But at the same time, she is facing challenges, real difficult challenges when it comes to academics. She is facing issues in reading and writing, specifically spellings. And this is impacting her academic progress or performance, let's say. Now, what is the problem? She reports that when she looks at written content, she gets confused with similar looking alphabets or similar looking numbers. Similar looking numbers से हमारा मतलब है B, P, D. ये जब सब एक साथ आते हैं तो बच्चा confuse हो जाता है, उसे समझ नहीं आता कि कौन सा B है, कौन सा P है और कौन सा D है, और उनको interchangeably बच्चा use कर लेता है. Now, because of this, it is impacting her ability to read and write. So when it comes to reading the text, she is making mistakes, she is not able to read it correctly, and she has also become slow in reading the text because she is confused with the appearance of these similar looking letters. Similarly, when it comes to writing, she is making many errors in the spelling, she is making mistakes. Now, this has really kind of affected her in a way that her confidence is going low into academics. And slowly she has started to distance herself from activities which involves reading aloud or involves writing. So, if we see here, the confidence of the child is also going low. This is a classic example of children with specific learning disability. This is not just the only kind of challenge that a child with specific learning disability faces. There are many other challenges which we will be discussing later in the session today. Now, if we look at this particular example and we try to think about it and analyze it, you will see that there are many different things here. First of all, let's talk about the good things that are there in this example, that the child is really doing well in other things that the child is doing. For example, swimming or horse riding or art classes or classical dancing or music. So we can say that the rule that there is a possibility that the level of intelligence of the child is low, that is ruled out. So we can say that the child's level of intelligence is not low because the child is performing well in other activities which require at least, if not above average, but average level of intelligence. But this child, if she's exceptionally well in all these activities, is demonstrating an average or maybe an above average level of intelligence. So that is one thing that we are sure of, that the level of intelligence is not compromised here. Now the second thing, if you see and you look at or you analyze the difficulties that she is experiencing. So she is having trouble in reading, she is having trouble in writing and with spelling specifically. Now you see these are three different things, yet they are interlinked, they are all language related challenges that she is experiencing. And this brings us to the definition of specific learning disability, which has been described in Rights of Person with Disability Act 2016. So the Rights of Person with Disability Act 2016 defines specific learning disability as a heterogeneous group of conditions wherein there is a deficit in processing language, spoken or written. So first of all, I want to bring your focus to the word. Please read the definition and look at it carefully. The first thing written is a heterogeneous group of conditions. That means that there is no one condition that we are talking about, or there is no one condition that the child may have. There are many different kinds of condition. It is a heterogeneous group of conditions. So one child may have difficulty in writing, other child may have difficulty in reading, and yet another child may have difficulty in expressing thoughts or arranging content in a sequence or expressing in a written format. So heterogeneous condition, and it does not stop there. We will discuss about other conditions also which are associated herein. So first thing is that there are heterogeneous group of conditions, and then we are talking about a deficit in the processing language. So processing language can exhibit itself either in spoken way or in written way, and this deficit in processing language further manifests itself in a difficulty which leads to difficulty related to comprehension, that is understanding, reading, writing, spelling, or to do mathematical calculations. So all these simple things which we feel are simple becomes a very difficult and troublesome task for the child. Now, the first type of disability, if we talk about that, before that, let us try to think about our brain. So basically what happens in a specific learning disability is that in our brains there are billions, millions, trillions of neurons. There are nervous system, there are connections, there are neural connections also, and there are pathways which stores information. There are pathways through which information flows also. Now the pathways which are very crucial and very essential to carry information or for the flow of information related to reading, writing, language is basically affected in case of children with specific learning disabilities. Because these crucial pathways are affected, the processing of the brain changes. So it does not mean that the intellectual level or the intelligence level of the child is less here or it gets compromised. Rather, we are saying that because certain pathways are impacted in a detrimental way, so there are different ways of functioning of the brain. So the brain functions and processes in a different way as compared to somebody who does not have a specific learning disability. Now let's talk about these specific learning disabilities and understand them in greater details. So the first kind of specific learning disability that we are talking about is dyslexia. Dyslexia, of course, is the most commonly heard specific learning disability. You must have heard about it very commonly. It is something which relates to the reading problem. There is a difficulty or there is problem in reading of the text. So here what happens is that whatever content comes there in front of the child on the screen, on the paper, the child has difficulty in reading it. I'll give you an example. If you look at your screen, can you try to read what is written on your screen? Some of you may be able to read it with some efforts, and if not the complete content or the sentence, but at least some words you will be able to read. However, some of you will not be able to read this content. But to tell you this, basically children with dyslexia who has difficulty in reading, when they try to look at the content at a text, they feel that the words are not spaced correctly, and that is exactly what you are seeing right now. If you look at just the box which is below it, you will be able to read the content. So this is the same sentence which is written, but the spacing is different. So when somebody or some people look at a page, the words are not spaced correctly, and that's exactly what happens with a child who has dyslexia. Right? This is not the only way that they feel the text comes to them. There are other ways also in which text appears to them. So some children with dyslexia or some people with dyslexia feel that when they try to read a text, the words are all crushed together or they are all jumbled, as you can see on your screen. So there are literally no spacing. I hope you can see your screen. So there are no space here between letters. So this is also one way how children with dyslexia looks at the content. I mean, the content appears to them. It is not that they are looking at it like this, but it is the content which appears to them like this. So there is no spacing which is happening between the words. So they cannot understand, they cannot interpret of course the problem with comprehension will happen. आप और मैंने अभी इस कंटेंट को देखा तो हमको ही प्रॉब्लम हुई थी इसको डिकोड करने में और अंडरस्टैंड करने में कि एक्चुअली क्या कंटेंट लिखा हुआ है और इसका क्या मतलब है. सो ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज़ डिफ़िकल्टी इन टर्म्स ऑफ comprehension when it comes to children who have specific learning disability, dyslexia that we are talking about. They feel that the words are either crushed together and have no space, or they feel that the spacing which are there between the words is not done appropriately. Now besides these two ways, there is another way in which they see the text. Some children or some people who have dyslexia, they feel that when they look at page or they look at some content, the content or the page looks shadowed or doubled when they try to read it. So as you can see on your screen, it is looking shadowed and doubled. And similarly, some people with dyslexia say that the words on the page look blurred from the center point when they try to read it. So just now we have tried to look at 4 different ways in which we can see the difficulties which are being experienced by a child or a person who has dyslexia. So the content or the page that they are reading appears to them in very different way as it appears to anybody who does not have this disability, this specific learning disability. Now if we try to understand this difficulty in reading, it can show itself in many different ways. You have just seen some ways, but the child with dyslexia has difficulty in decoding. When we say decoding, we are basically trying to refer to it that the child has difficulty in identifying and recognizing a particular letter and associated sound जो उस letter की होती है उसको भी recognize करने में बच्चे को मुश्किल होती है. So basically sounding out the words is something that the child really face difficulty with. It is very difficult and it is troublesome for the child to understand, identify a word and to understand and identify the sound which is associated with that particular word. So let us take a simple example. There is a simple word cat, which is C-A-T, cat. Now for a child with dyslexia, it is very difficult to break down this word cat into k-a-t.
Do you know that the world's population has reached 8 billion on 15th November 2022? And we are still counting. I don't know where do we go from here. The predictions are scary. Any idea how many people can Mother Earth sustain? India's growing population is a serious concern, and we are soon going to become the world's most populous country. Wow, number 1. Population is, after all, a human issue. The UN proposed Sustainable Development Goals cannot be achieved unless and until we consider the population dynamics. So, here we are. Indira Gandhi National Open University offers appreciation course on population and sustainable development. The course explores the linkages between population and sustainable development. In this course, there are diverse issues related to population, environmental safety, livelihoods, human health, migration, urbanization and much more. The course duration is 3 months, but of course you can complete it within a year. The eligibility of the course is graduation from a recognized university. So, if you are a development professional working in a government sector, researcher, or keen to know more about the population and sustainable development, the course is must for you. Hurry up and join this course so that we are able to convert population into demographic dividend and not convert it into demographic disaster. For more information, visit www.ignou.ac.in. Thank you. पहाड़ों पर जाना किसे पसंद नहीं। इस तरह के पहाड़ तो आपने देखे ही होंगे। चलिए आज आपको विशेष प्रकार के पहाड़ों की सैर कराते हैं। ये हैं कूड़े के पहाड़, जिनके बोझ तले दुनिया दबी जा रही है। इन कूड़े के पहाड़ों में हैं हमारे घरों, कार्यालयों, उद्योगों से निकलने वाली बेकार की वस्तुएं, जैसे इस्तेमाल किया हुआ कागज़, फटे कपड़े, पुरानी लकड़ी, धातु, कांच के सामान, सब्जी फलों के छिलके, पुराने मोबाइल, लैपटॉप इत्यादि। कूड़े के ये पहाड़ न केवल शहरों में बल्कि गांव में भी पाए जाते हैं। अपशिष्ट की बढ़ती हुई मात्रा और इसकी विषैली प्रकृति हमारे पर्यावरण और स्वास्थ्य को नुकसान पहुंचाती है। कभी सोचा है इसका निपटान कैसे होता है, या क्या होता है इन कूड़े के पहाड़ों का? कैसे हम इस समस्या से छुटकारा पा सकते हैं? इन सभी प्रश्नों का उत्तर देने के लिए इंदिरा गांधी राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विश्वविद्यालय अपशिष्ट प्रबंधन में प्रमाण पत्र कार्यक्रम प्रस्तुत करता है। यदि आप नगर निगम में कार्यरत हैं, सैनिटरी इंस्पेक्टर हैं, अपशिष्ट प्रबंधक हैं या अपशिष्ट से जुड़ी हुई परामर्श सेवाएं, अनुसंधान या विकास कार्य करते हैं, तो ये कार्यक्रम आपके लिए सर्वोत्तम है। कार्यक्रम की न्यूनतम योग्यता है 12वीं उत्तीर्ण और इसे 6 महीने में पूरा किया जा सकता है, या अधिक से अधिक आप इसे 2 साल के अंतराल पर भी पूरा कर सकते हैं। कार्यक्रम में शामिल है स्व शिक्षण पाठ्यक्रम सामग्री, ऑडियो वीडियो संसाधन और विभिन्न माध्यमों से शिक्षण की सुविधा। तो फिर देर किस बात की, चलिए समस्या का नहीं समाधान का हिस्सा बने। अपशिष्ट प्रबंधन में प्रमाण पत्र कार्यक्रम में दाखिला लें। हम आपके स्वागत के लिए आतुर हैं। अधिक जानकारी के लिए देखें www.ignou.ac.in। धन्यवाद।
Welcome back, dear learners. We just had a short break. So we were talking about dyslexia, and we had already discussed that what are the ways in which text appears to the child who has dyslexia. Now we were also talking about how a very simple word like cat is difficult for the child to break into individual alphabets or letters, and also to reblend it again and say the word aloud. So this is basically the difficulty, because the child takes so much time in understanding coding, decoding that we have understood just before the break, that the child is not able to read with much of the speed as compared to other counterparts, which also affects the fluency of the child. Sometimes the child who has dyslexia can decode, but there is a lot of struggle in understanding the meaning of the text. So the child really works hard and tries to decode the content which appears to the child, but the child is not able to understand the meaning of the text. The child is not able to understand what the text is trying to convey. Similarly, the child has difficulty with the reading comprehension. It is difficult for the child to read and understand, and this might also indicate that there is going to be a challenge in processing information in the brain, or having a very limited vocabulary. By this we mean that when the child is not able to understand the content, is not able to decode it in a comprehensive way, we say that maybe there is something at the level of the brain, some processing, there is a lag in that. Or we may also say that the vocabulary of the child is not as much as it should be as per the age of the child, or maybe because of the condition that the child has, which is dyslexia. So after dyslexia, we are talking about the next type of specific learning disability, which is dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is the difficulty that the child experiences in writing. Now, to understand dysgraphia, let me first show you this picture. If you look at the image, there is a sentence which is written. The sentence says, "The cat jumped over the moon." Now, there are two different children who have this specific learning disability who have tried to read the sentence and then rewrite it. Okay, so the first one which is written above the sentence is that Ted took that on. Now here in this sentence you can very easily see, if you can look at the cursor also, the child has done some omissions, some displacements, some insertions, some substitution and some omission again. So the cat has become that, where the child has omitted the letters E, C. The letter T and ED has been clubbed together, displacing cat jumped, making it Ted. Similarly, there is an insertion which is took, and there is a substitution of similar word the to that, and then there is an omission in moon. Similarly, another child has written it that jump no noon, or that jump no man. Right? So what we are seeing here is that the child has condensed the word, the child has omitted some parts of the word, the child has made reversal in terms of reversals in terms of the words which are appearing in front of him. These words are coming to the child or appearing to the child in the way that the child has written. It is not that the child is deliberately doing these omissions or doing these insertions or replacing the letters or replacing the words. But this is the confusion that the child is seeing, or this is happening in front of the child, which needs to be addressed when we talk about strategies that can be used to manage such kind of specific learning disabilities. We have specific strategies and that are essential to be used to ensure that such confusions can be sorted for each and every child. Now, after this example, you will be able to understand this difficulty in writing better. So, difficulty in writing, which is dysgraphia, can manifest itself in various ways. Just like dyslexia, there is no single way in which we will see that a child with dyslexia has different ways in which the child understands and interprets the information. Similarly, a child with dysgraphia also understands, interprets and reflects the information in different ways. So child find it very difficult to spell words correctly and also to use grammar properly. The difficulty is also related to challenges in processing language for the purpose of writing. So there is a trouble in writing a story, and the child find it difficult to organize their thoughts into clear sequence and then choose the right words and then write these right words with the correct spellings and to express that. It is very difficult for the child to do all together. That is one thing that we see very commonly in dysgraphia. The next kind of disability that we have in specific learning disability is dyscalculia, which is difficulty in mathematics. The child who has dyscalculia has a problem with calculations or understanding mathematical concepts. So they have a difficulty applying math skills to real life situation. For example, there is a child and the parents have sent the child out to buy some groceries. Now the child has bought the groceries and child is really struggling how much money should the child get back after buying the stuff. Right, so here we see that the child is struggling with doing simple calculations. Also, the child is not able to align the mathematical skills with daily living practices or daily life skills. So this can also be attributed to the weaker problem solving ability in children. Another kind of disability that we have is auditory processing disability, which is also known as APD. This technically is not a specific learning disability, but it absolutely co-occurs many a times with specific learning disabilities and can hinder learning. Now, what is APD? APD is auditory processing disorder, and when people or a child has APD, it might create difficulty in discriminating sounds in a noisy environment, in differentiating similar sounding words like cat, rat, pat, bat, sat, hat, mat. So they are all similar rhyming words, and the child may get confused between these words. Then the child has difficulty following simple spoken directions. Then also, the processing of auditory information is not as quick as compared to other children in a child who has auditory processing disorder. So, for example, imagine a classroom where there is a lot of noise. There is also noise coming from the outside of the class, and the teacher is giving instruction to children, and all children are following it, some are not following it, some are talking about it. And this particular child who has an auditory processing disorder finds it extremely difficult to focus upon the instructions or the requests that the teacher is making in the class with that noise in the environment. So that really kind of makes it difficult for the child who has auditory processing disorder to process the information which is coming through the auditory channel, to decode it, to process it, and to utilize it to give an output or to reflect upon it or respond upon it. Just like auditory processing disorder, we also have language processing disorder, which is also known as LPD. It is again something which coexists with specific learning disabilities. Here there is difficulty in expressing oneself clearly or following directions. This could also be a sign of learning processing disorder, because when we say that SLD is there, be it dyslexia, be it dyscalculia, be it dysgraphia, be it dysgraphia, we see that the language processing disorder is mostly associated with it. The child is not able to use the language or process the language which comes to the child at the same time to express also. Like we just discussed a little before the break that it is very difficult for children to think about the sequence in which things are happening, or the child wants to put something. For example, there is a classroom activity which is happening, and the teacher asks the child that yesterday was a holiday, what did you do? Write a description of the day that you have spent. Right? Or write an essay on how was your day with your parents on Parents' Day, or how was your day that you spent with your grandparents. The child who has specific learning disability will have great difficulty in understanding what is to be written, will have great difficulty in categorizing the different events, in sequencing them, ordering them, and then especially to write them, to express them. So that becomes a very difficult part for the child to respond to, and language processing disorder is something which makes it even more difficult. Then individuals with language processing disorders may have difficulty with understanding spoken language. They may express themselves clearly, is something that is always shadowed by their concerns of not being able to express themselves clearly. They have very poor writing skills, and it is very difficult for them to follow complex instructions or using the grammar correctly and properly. Whenever they try to write something, they often make mistakes, not just in spellings, but also in placing the subject, in placing the grammatical constructs. So it is kind of a very difficult task for them to write something, especially to imagine and write something. Then another kind of disability that we have is non-verbal learning disabilities, which is also referred to as NVLD. This specific learning disability basically affects the processing of visual information and non-verbal cues. So individuals or children who have non-verbal learning disabilities, they may show difficulty in identifying patterns. Now, what are patterns? Patterns are basically objects which are arranged in a sequence. So for example, there is a pattern of shape. You have a circle, and then you have a triangle, and then you have a circle, and then you have a triangle, and what comes next? So this is a simple pattern wherein a circle and a triangle are arranged one after another. But the child has difficulty in decoding the pattern that is there in front of the child and identifying what is to be there which comes next. So this is a very simple example of pattern, and children really have difficulty in understanding pattern. Now patterns are something which are very essential also because they are the basis of learning, especially when we talk about mathematics. And it is not just about mathematics. You talk about life cycle. If you want to teach the child life cycle of a flower, or a fruit or butterfly, how will you teach if the child is not able to understand the pattern? So whatever the non-verbal learning disability, here we are saying that any cue which is coming to the child in a non-verbal way, which is not in terms, which is not verbal, basically the child can see, the child can hear. So whatever is coming as a cue to the child in a non-verbal way, the child is not able to decode it. Just like we are talking about shapes as a pattern, in patterns, we talk about numbers also. We talk about alphabets also. So for example, if I say 1 followed by 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, what comes next? So you will be able to understand that there is a sequence to these numbers, and every number we are adding 1. So the last number that I'm asking is going to be 6. Similarly, if I say 2 and 4 and 6 and 8, what comes next? So you know that 2 is being added to each number, right? So this is very essential for the child to learn and understand that there is a sequence, there is a pattern, and the child is not able to decode it. The child is not able to understand sequencing and the pattern itself. This creates difficulty, and this creates a lag in learning, not just of mathematics, but majorly all the concepts, especially those which are also related to environmental sciences. And it is not just, if you can see on the screen, you see there are certain patterns. So the child has difficulty in recognizing these patterns. These are shapes. Similarly, there can be patterns which are associated with colors. So some colors are being repeated after some interval of time. So that is very difficult for the child to understand or to decode. Similarly, if we see here A followed by C, then E, then G. So we are missing, or we are dropping one alphabet in between. That understanding is something that the child feel is a very difficult task. So there are different kind of patterns that generally we see that children who have non-verbal learning disability, they have difficulty with. One is visual pattern, we have described about it. Then there are numeric patterns where numbers are used and they are organized in a sequence, and the child has difficulty in understanding the sequence. This becomes essentially very important later on when the child moves to the higher standards and when mathematics carries with itself real complex concepts also. Then there are alphabetic patterns, there are color patterns, there are rhythmic patterns also. For example, cat, bat, rat. write the rhyming words or create a poem or a rhyme using rhyming words. So that creates kind of a confusion with the child. Similarly, physical education activities, you all must have done these activities in your classroom where the teacher says sit, stand, sit, stand. Similarly, a physical exercise activity where the child is asked to jump and then run, or to climb and then jump. So these exercises, the patterns in physical exercise is something that the child faces real difficulty with understanding them. Then science patterns, like I mentioned, life cycle approach or life cycle patterns, that there is an egg, then it becomes a caterpillar, then the pupa is there, and then the butterfly is there. So understanding the pattern of life cycle is something which also eventually becomes very difficult for the child if from the very beginning the patterns have been an issue or a concern of understanding of the child. Then another kind of disability that we have under specific learning disability is dyspraxia. Dyspraxia commonly is also referred to as developmental coordination disorder or DCD. It is a neurological disorder. Specific learning disabilities we have discussed are all neurodevelopmental disorders. It is one of the kind of neurodevelopmental disorders. So DCD is also a neurological disorder which affects a person's ability to plan and execute coordinated movements. Now the coordinated movements, we say, what is the big deal about it? There's a lot of big deal about it, because planned and coordinated movement which are planned and the need to carry them out is essential to perform functions of a daily life. So daily living activities, be it buttoning or unbuttoning the shirt, be it tying the shoelaces, be it feeding self, they all they all require coordinated movements. So when the child is not able to control, when the child is not able to plan these coordinated movements, the child is really at a loss, specifically in fulfilling the activities of daily living. Now, what is it that is impacted here in dyspraxia is the fine motor skills, the gross motor skills, they are affected. The balance of the child is affected. Sometimes even the speech of the child is something that the child cannot control. This makes the very easy tasks very challenging. Example, all children are there sitting together in a playground, and suddenly they plan to play with a ball. Now, catching a football is something which is a difficult task for the child, because the child cannot coordinate the body movements, the gross motor as well as the fine motor skills of self. So these creates challenges in the daily living activities of the child, and when the child is not able to coordinate movements, it leads to low self-esteem. The child loses confidence and eventually becomes aloof. So simple task of buttoning, unbuttoning shirt, or maybe holding a pen or pencil to write, it makes the handwriting of a text very laborious for the child. The child will take longer to write something, to copy something from the board, or to write something in the notebook. And it will also create some kind of frustration in the child, that the child is making efforts, but because the child is not able to coordinate the movement, the child is not able to participate in social activities with other children, the child is unable to play efficiently, the child is unable to work efficiently in academics, the child is unable to coordinate the activities of daily living. So that becomes quite a concern for the child, and child experiences loss in confidence. Sorry. Now, these were basically the types of specific learning disabilities that we have discussed till now. These are the majorly specific learning disabilities: dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, non-verbal learning disabilities, auditory processing disorders, and language processing disorders. We will take a short break here, and then after the break we will discuss about the causes of specific learning disabilities.
Are you a fresh graduate? Do you want to fulfill your educational aspiration
by pursuing higher education in various interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary areas like environmental science, environment and occupational health, philosophy, sustainability science, folklore and culture studies? If yes, the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies offers various programs like Master's Program, Graduate Program, Postgraduate Diploma, Certificate and Appreciation Program. The school offers 5 Master's Program. Master of Science, Environmental Science. The eligibility criteria for MSc Environmental Science is Graduate in Science, BTech, BE, Agriculture Graduate, Forestry Graduate and Veterinary Graduate. School also offers Masters in Environment and Occupational Health, Masters in Sustainability Science, Masters in Philosophy and Masters in Folklore and Culture Studies. The eligibility criteria for these 4 Masters program is graduate in any discipline. The school also offers various socially relevant and need-based PG Diploma program like PG Diploma in Sustainability Science, PG Diploma in Environment and Occupational Health, PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies and PG Diploma in Migration and Diaspora Studies. The school also offers PG Certificate in Climate Change and Avshist Prabandhan mein Praman Patra. The school also offers 2 doctoral programs, PhD in Environmental Science and PhD in Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies. The school offers various innovative technologies and multimedia for providing a very excellent student support system. The study
Welcome back. So we were talking about specific learning disabilities, and now we will discuss about the causes of specific learning disabilities. Basically, there are 3 causes that we talk about when we talk about specific learning disabilities. The first is genetic influences. Second, prenatal and perinatal environmental factors. And the third one is postnatal environmental factors. Let's discuss them one by one. So genetic influences, when we talk about, we all know that we have a heredity playing a massive role in what we are. So with SLDs also, we see that many a times specific learning disabilities run within families. There is a lot of potential seen in the genetic influences, but we cannot totally say that genetics is only responsible for somebody to have specific learning disabilities. There are researchers which have identified that specific learning disabilities, specifically dyslexia, is associated with some genes which have been identified, but we cannot say still that all specific learning disabilities can be attributed to genetic or inherited factors. There are other factors also which influences, which have a big role, I would say, which acts as a possible or potential factor leading to specific learning disabilities. Some of them are prenatal factors and some of them are perinatal factors. Prenatal factors means that the factors which occur at the time of conception or during the period of pregnancy of the mother, and perinatal environment, that means around the time of birth of the child. So factors before the birth of the child and factors around the birth of the child also are very crucial and plays a very important role in being a potential factor to lead to specific learning disabilities. So these factors include, first, exposure to toxins. If there have been any kind of exposure to toxins during the period of pregnancy or at the time of delivery, then of course it can lead to neurodevelopmental disorders, which ultimately may lead to specific learning disabilities. Brain damage which may happen during the delivery, for example, if there is forceps delivery or the child, when being delivered, the brain has been damaged in some way or the other, then that may also lead to specific learning disabilities. And the third factor that we see is that anoxia, which is loss of oxygen. During the time of birth, when we see that there is an oxygen deprivation, the oxygen does not reach the brain, then certain part of the brain may get damaged, and that may contribute to specific learning disabilities. Then prenatal factors, if we talk about prenatal factors में हम बात करते हैं mother's intake of certain drugs which may be prescribed, which may be unprescribed. If mother consumes these drugs which may prove to be of detrimental nature to the growing fetus within growing child within the mother's womb, then there is a potential that these drugs may have to induce specific learning disability in the child. Besides, if the mother acquires certain infections like rubella, that can also be a factor which can lead to specific learning disability in the child. If the mother has consumed alcohol in an excessive way, if the mother consumes excessive alcohol, or she has been severely sick during the period of pregnancy, or she had fever, she had extreme temperature and the body has been keeping very unwell, she was very unwell, or she has been not taking a nutritious meal and has been malnourished, then these all also pool into the cause of being the child being with specific learning disability. Then the postnatal environmental factors are the factors which are basically acquired after the birth. These are the environmental factors that are responsible for damaging the neurological function of the brain. So accidents that causes damage to the brain, intake of certain drugs, dyes, lead or paint, that may lead to damage in the brain, and exposure to certain emissions and radiations can also lead to damage of the brain, leading to specific learning disability in a child or an individual. Now, these were the factors that causes specific learning disabilities, but there are certain factors which are believed to be a cause of specific learning disability, but actually in reality they are not. So environmental factors like limited access to quality education or limited access to healthcare facility or inadequate or inappropriate instructions by the teacher or the educator. These factors do not cause specific learning disabilities. I repeat, these factors do not cause specific learning disability. If a child has specific learning disability and the quality of education that the child is receiving is limited, then that is not helping the child. But if a child who does not have a specific learning disability and the child is getting very limited quality of education, then we can say that the child will not learn to read and write, but we cannot say that the child will acquire specific learning disability. Right. Similarly, healthcare facility, if they are absent to anybody who does not have learning disability, does not induce specific learning disabilities in the child. And most importantly, when there are inadequate or inappropriate instructions which are given in the classroom by the teachers, by the educators or any other educational settings, that does not mean that it will induce specific learning disabilities to a child. So basically, we have children with specific learning disabilities and we have children who do not have specific learning disabilities. Rather, they lack opportunities or they lack exposure to quality education. So those who lack opportunity or exposure to quality education, they can be given quality education. There is nothing to be talked about specific learning disability in this case. They cannot acquire specific learning disability to ensure that they learn to read and write, to ensure that they are able to utilize problem solving abilities in their daily life. They do not have problems related to reading, writing the text, related to spellings, related to verbal and non-verbal cues, related to mathematics. All we need to do is that we need to ensure that they have access to good quality education. And likewise, children who have specific learning disabilities, for them it is important that we make proper diagnosis, and then based on that diagnosis, interventions which are appropriate as per the particular kind of learning disability and the age of the child are to be given to the child to ensure that we attend to the needs of the child with a particular specific learning disability. With this, we wind up today's session. Today in this session, we have learned about specific learning disabilities, what they are, what are the different types of specific learning disabilities, what are the causes which are responsible or which interplay together in defining specific learning disabilities, and what are the causes specifically, I would say, which are not responsible for causing any kind of specific learning disabilities. Thank you.
Dear students,